Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Mike Luke, now joined by Mr. Tony Altimore. Hello, Tony. How you doing?
Bear down. Doing well, thanks.
Bear down. All right, Tony. Where are you coming from again? Florida, correct?
I'm in Florida right now, yeah. It's hot.
All right. We got a lot to get to this show. Obviously,
did anything happen in the past couple weeks? Seems like it's been a quiet couple weeks in sports.
I was going to say nothing that I know happened. All right. First and foremost, the dissolution of the Pac-12. Let's talk about it right here. Tony, you didn't believe...
We could do 10 hours on this. It's fascinating.
Tony, you didn't believe this was ever going to happen. What happened here?
Well, so first of all, the thing that I said since the beginning is that it was always going to be up to the Big Ten presidents. Mm-hmm. And as long as the Big Ten presidents weren't going to raid the Pac-12, that it would stay together. Mm-hmm. And I probably should have put that in smaller font more often, but I constantly said that since July. And I think one of the big failures of the Pac-12, although some people looking at Oregon and Washington question whether it's a failure or whether it was flailing around until it happened, but and we talked about how the Pac-12 needed to actually do something,
right? Instead
of just continuing to push a can down the road, because that time introduces risks. And the risk that came up was Fox came up with the money to hit the Pac-12 again, taking Oregon and Washington, and the conference could not stand with those extra losses.
All right, well, let's talk about it then from an Arizona perspective, because before that even happened, Arizona applied and gained admission Thursday night to the Big 12, which leads me to believe that Arizona was going to make that move either way there, Tony Altimore.
Except your regions weren't going to let you guys go.
I don't know, Tony. I don't know. You're
according to the regions and both presidents. So one of the things that I had been told by people from your school and your state last July was that if ASU wasn't going, you guys weren't going to be going. Mm-hmm. And that echoes what Robbins, Crow, and your regents have said, but I guess only the history books will tell us.
We don't, Tony. I was telling you from day one, though, Arizona was going, was I not?
You did. And again, what I would have been told the whole time was, unless ASU goes and ASU doesn't want to go, then you guys weren't going to go. But Oregon and Washington made that option easy for you, because once Oregon and Washington left and made the decision they were going to leave, then I don't think there was another option. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, and I think there would have been, but I don't think there was a smart option after Oregon and Washington left, which, again, we talked about, it was always up to the Big Ten.
Why do you think that let me ask you this then. Why do you think Arizona applied for and got admission to the Big 12 on Thursday night then?
Probably again, I don't have the NSA.
We're just asking for Tony Altimore to put on his brain scanner right there.
My opinion is probably at that point, President Robbins knew that Oregon and Washington were probably going to go.
Well, the reports, though, Friday morning were that Oregon and Washington were looking to re-up with the Pac-12, though.
That's what they say. But my guess would be, again, remember also, too, it's not over until the press conference.
True.
And it's not over in the regions, again, according to your regions and both presidents, they weren't going to have one go and one stay, which, by the way, is actually smart, I think.
Do you think?
And it worked out the way it worked for your fans. It worked out the way you guys wanted it.
We're going to get to the Big 12 here in a little bit, but let's talk about the Pac-12 presidents. Tony, you got to admit that these guys
they bungled
it from day one, and on top of that, it was that elitist mentality that they didn't understand that their product wasn't that good, and that's kind of where we ended up with right here.
Well, here's where I thought was really the interesting fail that we got yesterday, and that was the new information about Oregon's interim president. Funny enough, doing exactly the same thing that Oregon's president did in 1957 that caused the Pacific Coast Conference to fall apart, which was that with UCLA about to leave, and in 1957, UCLA was about to leave the Pacific Coast Conference.
Right.
They came with a deal for Oregon that was going to be mildly unpleasant for Oregon, but was going to keep UCLA in the conference.
Right.
Oregon said no. Right. And so UCLA left. If Oregon's acting president, by the way, this is not the new guy that just came in from Wisconsin. This was a temporary guy who then didn't get the job, got booted from the temporary job and replaced with like the chief accountant or something.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, it was lots of drama in the Oregon presidency. But the Oregon president was basically pitched with an offer in, I don't know, last October or whatever, whereby UCLA would be paid a little more than everybody else and they would agree to stay. The UC Regents would keep them. And that was new information, because the UC Regents information that I had come to told me they thought UCLA would have no problem getting out. So I don't know exactly the details of that. I don't know how many of the Regents were on board with that. And again, only the history books will be able to tell us the full info. But really interesting, Oregon killed that deal and botched it. And then I think, which is also another throwback to history, where Washington State botched stuff, I really think, and I know you're on board with this, that Washington State's president botched a whole lot of this. And they should have had this deal done months ago. And really, they should have had the one done that was not the Apple one, but was the other one. Well, they should have had it done in February.
Well, that's also what we're dealing with here when it comes to some of these guys. When, first of all, what the deal that Brett Yormark took was essentially what the Pac-12 turned that down. And that's what I've been saying from day one about these guys, is that they're very smart people, but they don't know most of them don't know anything about sports, Tony, nor do they care to know about sports. Cal, ASU, we've seen Michael Crow, guys like that. This was hubris at its most important hour. You got to blame the Pac-12 presidents for this unfolding here, Mr. Altimore.
Well, and part of it I would also say is a little bit of the difference that comes in managing sort of a broad enterprise and managing a zero failure option situation.
Right.
Because one of the differences here is that, like, you look at Michael Crow. Like, I mean, I know you have your sports, cannot stand him, but Michael Crow is a brilliant visionary of education. But when he tries something, if it fails, not the end of the world. Like, they open a campus in LA, probably a great visionary idea. If it fails, whatever, you close it. The problem with sports and the problem with these types of decisions is that they are zero failure. There's no room for them to fail. And so in really pursuing, as we know now more about this Apple deal, you probably actually, Phil Knight was on board with his Apple deal. I like the other one that they talked about better. Phil Knight was on board with his Apple deal. So, I mean, it couldn't have been that bad. Right. But it's a zero failure world.
Phil Knight was really, Tony, do you think Phil Knight was really on board with this Apple deal? Do you think that he really wanted to sign a $25 million deal for Oregon?
It wasn't going to be just $25 million. They seem pretty confident they would have beaten it. Again, I like the other one that was going to be, what did they say? ESPN, Amazon, NBC, CBS together as a bigger package. And again, I didn't know all the details of it. Brady McCullough gave us a lot more of it, but I knew that they had, from contacts with some TV firms, I knew that they had this other thing ready that then sort of trickled out at the end. That's what they should have gotten done in February and March. And that's where they failed.
Why do you think there were so many reports nonstop about how there was a deal right around the corner, when there really wasn't a deal right around the corner?
So one of the things that, so again, this is I'm not in the room, but what we seem to see happen is that the Pac-12 presidents, and this is where the Big 12 presidents were better about it. And part of it is sort of the nature of the institutions.
Tony's becoming a Big 12 fan, by the way. We can tell slowly but surely Tony Altimore becoming a Big 12 fan.
I have friends that went to all the Big 12 schools. Like, I have talked to Big 12 fans. They
you have a friend that went to Baylor, Tony? Be honest.
I have tons of friends that went to Baylor. Yeah. I worked with like bunches of student groups from Baylor and stuff.
Right.
One of the things that I think that was really an issue is that the Pac-12 presidents, instead of getting it done, they let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Instead of getting it done, they apparently kept sending their TV people back. Now, one of the other big screw-ups that they had, I think, is that they had the wrong TV people in this. So we talked a little bit about, they brought in a company called SMA who had advised them in 2021. Funny enough, where they didn't take SMA's advice,
right?
but they liked them. They didn't take their advice. Their advice was to add TCU in Houston, and they didn't take the advice, but they liked the company. So they brought them to run the TV thing. Brett Yormark brought Endeavor, the company that I think they should have brought, and I think you and I have talked about this. They should have brought Allen and Company, which is like the big media, like behemoth finance company, and that's who should have been bailing them out of this trouble. This whole thing should have been settled a year ago at, Allen & Company's big thing in Sun Valley. But instead, the Pac-12 brought in this little boutique firm. And again, the Pac-12 did a lot of things that would have been fine if they were all behind it. And the problem is that they weren't all behind it. And they did so many of those little things that, again, would have been fine.
But
they never got the job done.
Let's talk about But here's a couple of things that I have a problem with. And by the way, Tony, really appreciate you coming on because, again, a lot of people don't face the music. Tony Altimore is not one of those. We appreciate Tony.
And by the way, it's funny. People they're like, oh, your conference. My team's off to the Big Ten. We've been doing that since
Tony, no, we're going to talk about your Pac-12 and the remaining vestiges of it because we have Oregon State fans on here that like you a great deal.
Hey, and I love the Beavs too.
All right, let's talk about Let's talk about, though, what these presidents said. And here's to me where this all broke down. Colorado's president said for the longest time that, okay, we need to know what exactly we need deals. We need numbers by Pac-12 Media Day. He was very clear about that. He said it nonstop. And they came to Pac-12 Media Day and they didn't have any numbers. Bobby Robbins said, we need a deal with 50% streaming. What did they do? They come to a deal with 100% streaming. The Pac-12 was totally, with this. Some of these schools that left, the Pac-12 was totally brain dead when it came to this, Tony. You will agree with this.
Oh, I agree with that. And the blame goes to the three presidents on their executive committee. Mm-hmm. Because that's whose job. I mean, remember, the Pac-12 is a little different than some of these other conferences in that they're very board run and the presidents are in charge. And so the big failure you look at, and it was the Washington president, and I love the Washington president. She's awesome. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, and by the way, did you see the interview with the Washington president the day after they joined the Big Ten?
I just read the transcript. I didn't see it. But
watch the interview. Like she's amazing, but watch how excited she is about the Big Ten.
Right.
This is not like we're sorry we had to make this. This is a celebration of the Big Ten. More celebration, by the way, than USC or UCLA ever had. So there's some interesting questions there. But the Washington president, the Stanford president, who, by the way, was fired, but they, for some reason, still continue to value his input, and the Washington State president, who you and I both very much believe is highly assaulted.
You liked Kirk Schultz initially, Tony Altimore. Come on.
I love him. I like him as a person. I think he's done a lot of good things for them, but he botched this from the get-go that we now know.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then the other thing that happened that I think was a huge mistake was they kept this going and they did not instruct the conference to get it done. They kept sending it back for rework. And you and I talked about it. We said, do something. Add the new teams. Sign the deal. Do something.
Right.
And they just kept not doing things. And then eventually, when the Big Ten found the money, Oregon and Washington were gone, and there's no way that they could keep. There's no way that Utah, Arizona State, Colorado, actually anybody that could have gone to another conference at that point should have and did the right thing.
Well, here's the other thing, though, at the end of the day, that when it comes to it, and Tony, I got to give you this. You come at from the academic point of view. Totally get it.
From the institutional point of view.
The institutional point of view.
Where the big money is.
But you got to remember, though, that this is an athletic point of view right here. And Arizona fans, and quite frankly, nobody outside of Michael Crow, and California wanted to be 100% buried on streaming. I mean, because again, when you put the carrot before the
I agree with you, because again, they had another option, which again, in the last couple days and in the chaos of CU leaving, that was never really, they actually couldn't even get the final piece of that set. Right. Their job needed to be get the final piece of that set, which was ESPN, Amazon, NBC, and CBS. And that's what they should have gotten. They should have gotten it done. They should have gotten it signed in February, added the new teams, and been done. And if that costs them an extra $3 million a year, so be it.
All right,
that's what they should have done.
We're going to let Tony have a message to Big 12 people here. But first, BetMGM. Now, you might say, Tony Altimore likes USC. I'm going to bet against USC because of Tony Altimore.
Because we don't ever cover the spread? That's a good thing you can do that.
There we go. But check it out. Now, here's the deal. Sign up for BetMGM. Use bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live. But for our Arizona audience, place your first bet offer and receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if it loses. Check out the show notes for full details. Bet against Tony Altimore's USC Trojans, or maybe bet for our new friends in the Big 12 right there. But on that note, let's hear the disclaimer from the great Shane Diefenbach.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-522-4700 Nevada. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Kansas, Nevada, New York, or Ontario.
All right, Tony. Now, time for the Big 12 people. Do you want to apologize for the 12 and on talk?
Well, first of all, let's be real clear that there was a lot of absolutely fake stuff. I mean, how many times did they tell us, oh, Arizona's going to join tomorrow? How many times did people lie about Colorado Regent meetings that were about the treasurer hiring? So the fact that the Big Ten did what they did doesn't change the previous 11 months of nonsense. I mean, here, just sort of
Tony,
like
you're better than this, Tony. Come on.
Marjorie Taylor Greene got elected despite the fact that, the QAnon stuff was baloney. So, again, it worked out the way it worked out because the Big Ten went, and then you guys did the choices you needed to do. And that doesn't change the months and months and months of nonsense that we had from a lot of people, a lot of sources, and a lot of the fans deserve better than that. I mean, how many times did we hear that Arizona's applied to the Big 12 yesterday? No, they didn't. So there was so much of that stuff, and it all came down again to, in the end, we said the Pac-12 had to get something done, and they didn't. And then when the Big 10 made their move, that's what was always going to happen.
But wasn't there actually more conspiracy talk though going on the pro Pac-12 side about a deal being right around the corner, unity statements, everybody locked in?
Well, they just couldn't get it done. It's like my beloved Trojans getting to the 1 yard line and fumbling the ball.
Right.
I mean, that's literally what they did. Is they got to the 1 yard line a couple different times, fumbled the ball, and couldn't get it in the end zone. And that's a failure on the presidents. It's not a failure on the ADs even. It's a failure on the presidents. They should have gotten it in. And they absolutely failed. And the thing that I think is really sad is that some of these presidents sort of need to be held accountable for it. And the hard thing about that is that you look at Washington, who was the chairman of the conference, and Oregon, who blew the chance to keep UCLA. They got into the Big Ten, and so you kind of have to wonder, did they get what they wanted?
Now you got to remember though that with the Pac-12, Colorado though didn't wait for Oregon or Washington. They bounced before all of that though, Tony.
They did. It seems like again, in the room, they kind of knew where these things were going. It seems like they bounced after the ESPN, NBC, Amazon, CBS thing fell apart. Mm-hmm. The other thing with Colorado, and this is something we've talked about this, but first of all, there's a lot of people in Boulder that were unhappy when that happened institutionally. A lot of people were unhappy.
Deion Sanders wasn't.
No, I also give Colorado a little bit of credit, a little bit of kind of a pass, because one of the things that I think is understandable why they made a decision that would seem not rational to a lot of people is that perhaps they just needed a new start. I mean, this is one of the worst football teams in all of major sports football, and they're going to be terrible again this year. And so what this may be doing is, sometimes in life you make decisions that kind of give you a fresh start. You just
never
start it off. So, I don't begrudge them that as much. Certainly a lot of their folks were unhappy. I'll tell you another area that I think the Pac-12 failed Colorado in is Colorado wanted to add, and the Pac-12 didn't add. Colorado's on the record pushing the Pac-12, add San Diego State, add SMU. One of the other things that Colorado Regents even talked about in their meeting was the idea that they didn't like losing Southern California. Colorado depends on students from California.
But Tony, you got to remember though, like I keep saying, a lot of these presidents don't like sports. Bobby Robbins even came out and said he was the only one that was for adding Oklahoma and Texas back in the day to the Pac-12. That's what we're dealing with.
Long before he had that job. Bobby Robbins, that was years before he got his job. He was a Stanford heart surgeon at the time.
He still wanted to do it though.
No, Bobby Robbins wanted to add all 8 of them and have it be the Pac-20.
Right.
The Oklahoma, first of all, they always wanted Texas. Mm. But remember, the issue with Texas, there's a lot of interesting sort of confused folks right now that forget what happened with the Pac-12 in Texas. And that was that the Pac-12 wanted Texas. Texas insisted on 3 bring-alongs or 4 bring-alongs. And Texas was insisting that they were going to have to, because ESPN then came up with a last-minute bribe, offered them the Longhorn Network. And USC and UCLA said, oh, no. If you get a network, we get a network. And our network is going to be really valuable. And the Pac-12, they couldn't lose the LA market. So that fell apart. The Pac-12 didn't turn down Texas. The Pac-12 and Texas couldn't come to agreement on whether Texas would have a network or not. Now, a year later, and I think this was a failure on the Pac's part, they turned down Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Right. Now, let me ask you this then. Why were so many of the academics then caught off guard by this? Because, again, these are the smartest, I mean, especially in the conference. This is the conference where these are elite academic schools. Why were they so caught off by guard by this, Tony Altimore?
Well, first of all, because they would all jump to the Big Ten in a heartbeat if you gave them the chance.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, the Big Ten is not just the sports. The Big Ten is integrate your purchasing and your libraries and your research and your
cities,
IT,
funding, all of
kind
that
of stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So for a school like Washington or Oregon, that is a dream for anybody. For Oregon State, Washington State. Heck, I mean, one of the things, and you and I have talked about this, I don't know if we talked about it on the air, we've talked about it offline, but I mean, I think Arizona and Arizona State are more Big Ten-ish than a lot of the schools that people talk about as candidates for
the Stanfords of the West, or the Stanfords of the Southwest.
The Stanfords of the desert, exactly. I mean, you guys are a great school. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I did put some updated charts out on Twitter of what the new Big
Tony
12
Altimore
looks
with
like.
charts? No way.
Under most metrics, the U.S. News one's a little maligned by the public, but under most metrics, the 4 best schools in the Big 12 right now are Arizona, Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah. So you guys are a great school, and the Big 12 got a great score in you guys.
Right. Now, Brett Yormark, we got to talk about him. This guy gets it.
Got what he wanted.
What's that? He got exactly what he wanted. But here's the difference, though.
Good job, Yormark.
And I don't really blame Kliavkoff because, like you said, it's the president's here. But Brett Yormark said, I'm going to do X, Y, Z.
By the way, if it wasn't the president's, Kliavkoff would have been fired months ago.
Correct.
He's doing the work, doing what his presidents tell him to do.
Yormark did everything, though, that he said he was going to do, while there were many skeptics. There were many skeptics out there that didn't think he could do it. Now, what do you want to say to Brett Yormark out there?
Oh, I've always said he's doing exactly the job that his presidents need him to do. Mm. And one of the things too, and I think we've talked about this. I'm not sure, but I think that because he's really good, and I think he is good enough to adjust the leadership style to different conferences. So, for example, the way that he runs the Big 12 would not work in the Big 10. It would not work in the Pac-12, but it works really well for the Big 12. I think he is smart enough and slick enough and knows what he's doing. Like, he would adjust the leadership style necessary to be successful wherever he was. And he has delivered for his presidents. I mean, one of the other things too, their PR firms delivered to their school. Their media negotiators, unlike the PACs, delivered for their schools. And that's, they get salutes for that. But
you did call Brett Yormark. You did call him a con man though one time.
No, I've said he does the carnival barking that their conference needed.
But is it carnival barking if it's actually working though, and if it's actually coming through?
It's good PR. It's exactly what they need. I mean, here's an example. Let's look at the really neat little clinic they did for like 100 kids in Harlem a couple weeks ago. People. So one of the things that they like, I think that's wonderful, right? It's a wonderful event for kids in New York City. Like, as a New York City resident, I'm all about it.
Tony, how many houses do you have? Florida, New York, California?
I travel around. But one of the things that I think that it was really interesting about it is it's pitched as this like whole big groundbreaking thing. It's not groundbreaking. It's a clinic for like 100 middle school kids who get to meet a bunch of heroic, really cool college basketball coaches, and that's just awesome. It's just an awesome event. But they have pitched it as this big transformational thing. They're Mexico. They're going to play a basketball game in Mexico. They play basketball games all over the world all the time. They're going to play a bowl game in Monterey. Great. Use a beautiful soccer stadium in Monterey instead of a rainy Fenway Park in December where you have to share a sideline and only use one end zone. Like, these are just like good ideas, but they are brilliantly marketing them to make them seem like they're big and transformational. And it's phenomenal PR and phenomenal marketing. And they're also generating a spirit for the conference that was lacking. And that's the thing, is that it was so lacking in that conference that they deserve all the credit in the world for building that up. I mean,
Tony,
it's spectacularly done.
Tony, one thing I need to get from you, though, is to never take presidents what they're saying publicly at face value. Can I get you to say that you will never do that again?
Well, certainly not Kirk Schultz.
Right.
There's a few that I think are a little more reliable. Dr. Kalse was pretty reliable. Dr. Folt has always been reliable, but there's a couple that I think here certainly failed. And I'd be really curious to know again what happened more behind the scenes. For the Pac-12, when you look at the failure of the PCC, that stuff happened in 1957. It took until they wrote this book in 1999, I think, when we actually found out what really happened with the presidents. And we may someday know here because, again, now we just found out about Oregon botched the deal to keep UCLA. We know Washington State botched a whole bunch of it. We know Stanford botched all of it.
Tony, you don't need to do any of that. You could have just listened to me from day one.
I know. You had it. You knew it.
All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about what you would do with the remaining 4 right here, and then we're going to make fun of Michael Crow a little bit here. But first,
I forgot my popcorn.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, but first, Wink. Here's the deal. Hold on. I got to find this read here, Tony. This is a good read. All right, Wink. Here, I like this one. A seltzer with a wink of THC. Get it?
Ooh, I like it.
You get it? It's funny. All right, here's the deal. Available in either 2.5 milligrams or 5 milligram cans, you can find Wink right here in Arizona. Look for Wink at all Sunday Goods dispensaries in the Valley and Botanica Gardens in Tucson. They're now in 12 states nationwide and even recently launched online ordering and home delivery to about a dozen others. To find the fastest way to get your hands on it, check out drinkwink.com. All right, Tony. We have got a lot of Oregon State fans in here. We've got a lot of Washington State fans. For obvious reasons, they like you a great deal, along with Cal and Stanford fans. Now, what are the schools that, since you want to keep the academic, the elites together right there?
How does the devout Trojan alum somehow become the champion of Cal and Stanford?
I feel like I have to take a shower. I thought you worked for Cal. Weren't you an advisor?
I know. I have nothing to do with Cal. In fact, I'll tell you a really funny story. When I was applying to business schools, the Haas School at Cal is a really good business school. When I was applying, it's like I was staring at the page and like I had writer's block. And finally I was like, oh, I can't do this. I don't want to go to Cal. And I just closed the window and went to school back east. It was way better.
I'm telling you, because you got a Twitter following right now. What you need to do on Twitter, though, don't block, just mute. It's much, much better, Tony, because then people don't get mad and you don't have to pay attention to them.
You know, we did a study on this when I was in business school, actually, on optimal responses. I don't make money from the folks. So if people want to be nasty or argumentative or contrary, I only have 60 seconds in a minute and I only have, 1900 pixels on the screen. And so if people are wasting my time or wasting my screen, it's not worth it. Not worth it.
Fair
I don't get paid for them. You get money per clicks. I don't get money. So they're gone.
All right. Now let's talk about the Pac-12, the remaining 4 schools right here. What are the schools that you would look to add that could add a little bit of gusto? Maybe a UC Irvine, perhaps? What are you looking at there, Tony?
Where's NPOB1 so we can talk about Irvine?
Oh, NPOB1's going to be on. He'll be on here.
Turn to the show, NPOB1. We need him.
He'll be live tweeting this later when he gets out of playing golf.
I can't wait for it.
What are the schools that you would add, though, Tony Altimore, to make the Pac-12 as vibrant as possible?
So first of all, it really is going to depend on Cal and Stanford. I mean, Cal and Stanford, they're turning on. They've got Condoleezza Rice and George Bush, for SMU, pumping to try to get them into the ACC. So I think first of all, it depends: can they get into the ACC?
Right.
If so, yes, they should go in a heartbeat. Like that's the right decision they need to do. They actually fit really well for the ACC. They'd be strategically right for the ACC. It's a good fit. They should do it. If that fails, and they're stuck there at the table as the Pac-4, then they really need to take a look at what to do. And I think that they need to add the biggest, smartest, and closest brands that they can. And most
what are those brands, Tony? Throw them out there. What do you got?
San Diego State and SMU, absolutely. Memphis, Tulane, Rice, Fresno, Boise.
Boom. It's like you never lost anybody.
Maybe USF. I mean, the thing is they you need a mixture. You want a mixture. Ideally, again, you want great brands, great football, great schools, great markets, great fans. You want all of it.
What about UNLV, Tony?
UNLV is, maybe UNLV is actually.
You want to say it? Say it.
the problem is their football is so bad. And I think that what they need relevancy.
Right.
Again, this is just my opinion, and we can crunch numbers on this. And also one of the other things that we can't crunch as we look at it is we can't know who has a president and AD that are like bought in and committed and moving towards it. Like, here's an example. Boise State. President Trump at Boise State and Jeremiah Dickey, their AD, like they have visions of great things for Boise State. And Boise State's academics, their sports, everything is like on a hockey stick. But if you look at their numbers and you say, okay, Boise State's ranked like, I don't know, 300th or whatever. No, Boise State is rapidly booming everything they're doing. And so you have to make, at this point, beggars can't be choosers. They need to make some decisions.
What about UConn?
And you have to pick where you're willing to bend. And a school like Boise gives you good football, relevant football. It gives you a school that has that desire, that's trying to do great things, and would be good for them.
But don't we look at academics though first and foremost, and what the academic brands would be? What about Rice?
Rice is a huge so again, they got a new AD. I don't know their new AD. Mm-hmm. And so the question would be outstanding academic school. But the question would be, is Rice really committed with their new AD? Do they want to do what it takes to be relevant and be good again? Which they have all the resources in the world they could do. Now, some of these schools don't. I mean, where I went to grad school used to play in front of 75,000 people a week. They and Notre Dame were the only two schools in the country that had their own national TV contracts. And in the mid 50s, they pulled back the throttle and they said, we really don't want to do this anymore. And they pulled back the throttle, and now they play in front of 8,000 people in their 75,000 seat stadium. So it really depends on does your school want to do what it takes to succeed? For somebody who does, Memphis, Boise, Fresno, San Diego State, SMU, this could be a great opportunity. But and this is a huge thing, this is all my opinion, guys. This is not like a special inside info, whatever. This is my opinion. If they lose the next two, then I think that they need. I don't know if they can really justify doing the whole sort of I've called it kind of like the all-star team option. Could you take the all-star team from the AAC and the Mountain West? Because one of the other things that they're going to need is they need leadership.
Mm-hmm. They need leaders of men. Tony, would you take this job, Tony? You would take it.
I would take the chief of staff job. They need a commissioner who's got ESPN on speed dial. Mm-hmm. And I think there's three people that could be that commissioner job. Oliver Luck, who's actually helping them do it right now, Mike Oresco, and Gloria Nevarez. Those are the three people
you want to know something?
Do it.
Want to know something about Oliver Luck?
He should have been the Pac-12 commissioner 2 years ago.
He was telling people a week before it all imploded that it was gone, that the four corner schools were gone. Oliver Luck knew, Tony Altimore. Just throwing that out there.
He knows the TV people.
What's that?
He knows the TV people.
So
again, I question it, and I don't have the NSA insight as to what exactly went wrong.
You're next CIA agent. Come on, let's be honest here.
Hey, it was a lot better when we had the NSA to tell us what people were saying on the phones, all overseas, not Americans. But the catch is, again, like I said, I really thought that the Pac-12's better path was the one that had multiple networks. They should have signed in February. When that, whatever happened to make that not be their final on the table deal, I think that they were toast at that point. Because again, the issue with the Apple thing, again, Phil Knight really liked it, but the problem with the Pac-12, the whole saying fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me.
Larry Scott, my friend.
Larry Scott. They blew the Pac-12 network, and I think they were gun shy, and so they were never going to want to bet on themselves. They needed a recovery time. Now,
all right.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right. Here's what I think I can say for Tony. Tony is now a Big 12 fan because Big 12 has the best basketball in the country.
Good basketball. No question.
It's got really good football as well. It's got a leader of men in Brett Yormark. Right now, Tony Altimore, I need you to say that you've become a Big 12 fan. Do it.
I have been a Big 12 fan for longer than most of you guys have been. Mm-hmm. I actually very much supported a lot of the Big 12's moves when they were adding the 4. Now, and again, I've worked with kids from all the different Big 12 schools.
Tony, I just need you to say yes.
There are a lot of vile, nasty Big 12 fans. But one of the things that I've always tried to do is try to differentiate between my actual friends who are at all of the different Big 12 schools and went to all the different Big 12 schools and the nasty keyboard warriors, because those are two very different things.
Well, there's also a lot of I would say that there's a lot of nasty Pac-12 sports fans, but they don't exist. I will say this, Tony, you got to
sometimes do say something bad about like Cal, and they'll like come out. I've had like a crazy Stanford person.
Tony, there's no Cal fans. Let's be honest here.
Well, that's what I would have thought until they came after me.
All right. So right now, though, I can get that Tony Altimore is going to be a Big 12 basketball and football fan and a Brett Yormark fan. Correct.
I've always said he's doing exactly what he needs to do, and he's doing it brilliantly.
All right. That's what we like. That's why we like you here on this show here, Tony.
Well,
all right.
Here's the other thing, by the way. Here's my question for you guys. Will this, because I always pick Arizona in my pools, and you always turn into a pumpkin on like March 10th. Will this better Big 12 season get you guys to be able to win? So when I put you in the Final Four, you'll make it?
That's why we want to get out of the Pac-12 here, Tony, because we want Tony. Now we're finding common ground right here.
I like it. I want you guys in the Final Four where I pick you there.
Exactly. That's what we're looking for here, Tony. We want better competition, not worse competition, and with schools here that actually care. All right. Now, Leah, I don't know if you can pull this up or not, but Michael Crow's comments from yesterday about the streaming. If this would be possible, Leah, if you have that would be awesome to be able to put that one up there.
You love that Apple deal.
Leah's got it. By the way, Leah, our esteemed producer, backs the A as well. She's one of the U of A greats that graduated right there. Leah, we're ready to see this video.
Bear down, Leah.
I texted George, reached out to him, and effectively I said, hey, I'm sorry it came down to this. And I'm sorry I put you in a tough position, but this was something that we had to do, and I'm sorry that my gain is your loss. And we had a very collegial conversation. George was fantastic. I didn't do it. Expansion didn't happen in someone's shadow. It didn't happen at night. It wasn't a shock and awe moment. Everyone knew the Big 12 had an appetite to expand. And I maybe some people in the industry didn't like that I was so intentional about it, but I'm very transparent. In fact, I telegraphed it. And I just felt that was the right way to do it versus other things that I witnessed and observed in our industry over time, where transparency really wasn't really what happened.
I apologize. We were going to play Michael Crow first. That's on me, and that was a miss up on my part.
Also a great clip. And let's give Yormark some credit for that. I think that was he's got some good points, and he deserves credit for it. He called the Pac-12 because one of the things people forget is these guys work together on a lot of stuff. And there was another interview. I don't know if it was that same interview with him, but another one where he talked about one of the things that he told the commissioners when he came in is he said, sometimes we are partners and sometimes we're competitors. Sometimes we have to compete. And they competed. And again, the Pac-12 has no one to blame but themselves. No one to blame but themselves.
Now, so you give Brett Yormark an A on how he's been as a commissioner for the Big 12. Is this correct?
For the Big 12, he needs like an A+++.
All right. Leah, we got a clip right there. This is going to be a clip, maybe a short, 39-35. Tony Altimore right there. That's why. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about Michael Crow. But first, let me tell you, you might look at me and you're saying, listen, there is nothing cool about Mike Luke. You'd be right. That's nothing cool.
That's not true.
There's nothing cool about Mike Luke. This is true. But when I am cool, Shady Rays is the only reason for the coolness. Here's the deal for Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out the best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code PHNX for 50% off 2 pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. And never a better time to become a PHNX diehard right here. All kinds of good stuff. We got everything basically handled right here. Check out to become a diehard today. Check out phnxlocker.com to grab your membership to receive exclusive content, discounts on all events, merch, and access to our Discord chats where maybe Tony Altimore's name would be mentioned at points. All right, now, Leah, if we could have Michael Crow, the esteemed Michael Crow, the elite academic man, Michael Crow.
We had what I thought was a great offer from Apple. Most of the fan base didn't think it was a great a great deal, but I don't think they knew that much about it. So basically what the Apple deal was is Apple would spend $500 million in the first year to take all the football games, all the men's basketball games, and all the women's basketball games in the Pac-12, digitally capture them and make them available to everyone. And you could play the games whenever you wanted to play them. That's a huge thing. And all of the data from those games would be available. So you could zoom in on Mike Broomhead, the player. You could zoom in on, great plays. You could be watching all the games at the same time if you wanted. There was going to be a fee for that, and that was the big uncertainty. And then a guarantee of a certain price, a certain income to the schools, and then a joint partnership going forward of anything above the guarantee would be a 50-50 split. So from my perspective, you kept the Pac-12 together as a regional conference, and then you'd have this whole new way to broadcast digitally all of your content. Most of us thought that was a pretty good deal, including me. Along the way, others didn't think that was a good deal. Maybe that Apple shouldn't do that. And so at the last second, the Big Ten, working, I would guess, with their media groups, picked off 2 teams.
All right, Tony, he said right there, that's the problem with these Pac-12 guys. By the way, where is the comment on here? Corey Wardhall. Don't worry, we're going to get to that. But he said it was a good deal, just people didn't understand it. That is the problem there, Tony Altimore.
Well, and I mean, I think it would be really interesting because, again, what he was talking about, and I don't know what all they pitched, but it sounded like kind of a mix of like a huddle, kind of like the not just like the regular huddle, but like sort of like the institutional version of huddle, where you could do a lot of really cool stuff. And it might have been really neat. Again, the issue that I had for the Pac-12 is that they were so gun shy after the situations with the Pac-12 network. And the real situation with the Pac-12 network, let's be honest to you guys, and I don't want not to go on the side here, but just real quick. The real issues with the Pac-12 network is that during the decade of the Pac-12 network, USC, UCLA, Arizona State, Washington, Cal, and Colorado stunk.
Mm-hmm.
And if they hadn't all stunk,
Tony, that's blaming the victim. Tony, that's blaming the victim right there.
Oh no, that's blaming my own team. We had the Clay Helton era. We had the sanctions era and the Clay Helton era. We were terrible. Right. Again, if we hadn't been terrible, then more people would have demanded. Again, people talk about the failure to get on DirecTV. If the teams hadn't been bad for that decade, then people would have DirecTV would have been demand force to carry it. So again, the real failure of the Pac-12 network comes down to having too many teams who stunk for a decade. And now, unfortunately, or fortunately, are finally good again for the last year of the conference, which is kind of wild. By the way,
the Optimist says, the Optimist, tweet at me and we'll find, he says, Tony, he's asked to be unmuted like 30 times. I've never seen this before. Tony, he said it'll be good. We will talk about, tweet at me and we'll get Tony done.
I will tell you, people that make nasty personal attacks, and I don't know the Twitter account, people that make nasty personal attacks, I don't deal with. Again, I only have 60 seconds in a minute and 1900 pixels on a screen. So, if there are people that make nasty personal attacks, I don't deal with them. But if there's somebody that, is somebody like neat person, like our friend NPOB1, who's awesome. Like, I love that guy.
Now, Tony, you did say some mean things about Big 12 fans. Do you want to apologize?
No, because a lot of the nasty people, there are vile people that have sent me threats. There are nasty people that there's actually a particular, just an absolute low-life piece of human trash that dug up old pictures of me with an X to send him to somebody to say he's a sinner. So to those vile people, I got one finger for you.
But what about the good folks, the mainstream Big 12?
So I have a lot of wonderful friends from the Big 12 who are great friends of mine. Again, I've worked with students from every single campus of the Big 12. I've been to half the campuses of the Big 12.
Right.
And one of the things that I've always tried to do is differentiate between the good actual fans, which is why I always said, the good fans deserve better than a lot of these nasty people.
Right.
And so to a lot of those people, a lot of the keyboard warriors, you can go shove it up, where.
Right.
To the good fans who are, again, my friends. I talk to my friends from the Big 12.
To the overwhelming majority of Big 12 fans. How about that?
Exactly, which is why I try to differentiate between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for example, there's some, and again, I don't want to like name people specifically, but there's some really nasty people who absolutely I have no interest in, again, have just shown true violence. And the sad thing is every fan base has some of those. Our Trojans have some of those. Your Wildcats have some of those.
Yep.
Even like
everybody's got right.
Yeah.
But
even like Dartmouth has some.
But it's not just Big 12 folks. It's all across the board right there. We would agree with this.
Oh, everyone has some. There's a lot that came after me, and to them, I have no use for them. No time for them.
All right, Tony. Now we had a couple questions here about possible teams right here, though. Tony Altimore, we want to talk about this right here.
I don't think I can do the comments. Which teams?
All right, let's see here. I got to go back up here. All right, Tony. I'm going to name some teams for you here, and this is how we can get back to being the Conference of Champions. Let me know what you think. You agree with
Conference of Champions is now the Big Ten, but go on.
You agree with San Diego State, correct? I mean, you 100%. Already said that.
I've said that since the day USC and UCLA left.
What about Fresno State?
I also say Fresno State. I actually put out a thing on July 2nd, 2022. The 5 teams that I thought the Pac-12 should go for at the time were San Diego State, SMU, Fresno, Air Force, and Rice.
All right. What about you said Boise State as well.
I said Boise State. 100 now with the current circumstances, 100%.
Nevada.
Maybe. Again, that one I'd have to know the president and the AD, and I don't know about I don't know their vision and strategy. Their athletic performance probably isn't on par yet.
Colorado State.
Colorado State's put the money in. They've got the market. They've got
Tony Altimore likes Colorado State as a replacement for Colorado.
So I don't think they're a replacement for Colorado.
You think they're an upgrade?
Well, who isn't?
There you go.
But at the same time, well, actually, that's not true. There are some teams that are worse than Colorado. But with Colorado State, again, they haven't been winning, but they're certainly doing some committing to it. But Colorado State's a great school. It's right by the airport. It's a good market. Great fans. That would be another one. Memphis would be one of my top ones if that was an option.
All right, I got some other ones for you here. Some other hard-hitting ones. New Mexico, Tony Altimore.
So their football has been bad ever since Cal stole Marv Levy in like 1959 or whatever.
Yeah, but you know what? There's always a new horizon.
Again, if you had a president and an AD in there, and which I don't know, if you had a president and AD in there who were like, this is our vision, this is what we're doing, this is how we're building the program, just like what Boise State did when with President Trump and Jeremiah Dickey. If you had somebody like that at New Mexico, New Mexico is a state flagship school. It's right in the middle of the conference. Certainly would be a good one.
Now, we've always talked about the Pac-12 getting their foothold in Texas. How about here's 2 schools for you right here, besides just Rice and SMU, because we've already talked about them. UTEP and UT San Antonio.
So UT San Antonio, another. Now they just moved up to the AAC, but UT San Antonio is a great school. It's part of the UT system. System is an awesome system. That it's also not that hard to fly into. They got a great stadium. That's one I would certainly lean to. UTEP has not had the on-field success as much because one of the issues that I think that they have right now, and it's just my personal opinion, this is not like inside, but I think they need football relevancy. They need to sit there right between the Big 12 and the AAC now that they've taken this nosedive, and they need to get as close. They're not going to hit where the Big 12 is, but they need to get as close to the Big 12 as they can get with kind of like a G5 all-star team.
All right, now it's time for our BetMGM pick of the week right here. Tony Altimore, you can hop in on this one as well. By the way, Leah told me, I asked Leah if there was any hockey games going on. I guess there's no hockey right now. But she said take the over, back
maybe in Sweden.
That's what I'm telling you, though, Tony Altimore. We're taking the over, back the A of 5 wins on BetMGM. Do you have a pick of the week, Tony Altimore? You can go with anything you want.
So I just watched another interview with Jed. I just watched Jed Fish and Andy Staples.
He's the man.
So, okay, I said that the day they hired him. I said that when he had his really bad first year. I've been on Team Jed Fish the whole time. So I'm saying take the over on Jed Fish.
All right. Can I also get you to? Can I get a back the A and back the A in the Big 12? Can I get that?
How about a back
No,
the A
back
and
the A and go back the A and go Big 12.
No, I'm saying back the A and bear down Big 12.
Can I get a back the Big 12 as well? Come on, Tony.
Hey, back the A, back the Big 12. They're in good shape.
There we go, right there, Tony. Like I said, I got to give you.
And by the way, I think your football team's going to do well in that conference.
Tony, I got to give
building what you guys need.
Tony, I got to give you a lot of credit. You're a really good sport here, man. This has been a lot of fun.
I love Arizona. It's fun hanging out with you guys.
Right. But again, you're going to also Tony is promising that he's going to root for the Big 12 and he's going to become a Big 12 fan. We've gotten that confirmation here.
I'm backing the soon-to-be Big 12 champion Arizona Wildcats.
All right. For Tony Altimore.
By the way, that is going to drive the Kansas people nuts when you beat them, and I'm here for it.
All right. Tony, appreciate you coming on, taking all the hard questions. For Tony Altimore, I'm Mike Luke, Leah behind the scenes, making me look much cooler than I should, and Tony Altimore making Tony look just like Tony. You have been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.
Wow.